Join us as Women of Courage and celebrate the achievements of women. Good afternoon. My name is Gloria Lee. I am the moderator for the show Women of Courage. We're going to thoroughly discuss the sex trade taking place in our community and the country. For us, this is high priority. We cannot let the deviant men and women in our communities win just because we fail to band together and mount a defense. Before I begin, I want to say please do not ignore any of the information we discuss. If you missed something, email us at murdervoices@gmail.com and we will send you our links to our broadcast. This is life-saving information. Whether you believe it or not, once your child is taken for the sex trade, there is nothing you can do and no one you can go to. There are nonprofit organizations that give lectures to prevent this practice and try to rescue people, but there are no state agencies that send investigators out to look for kidnapped victims of the sex trade. You are on your own. Think of how you would feel if a kidnapping takes place in your family, if your daughter or favorite niece is taken and sold into sex slavery. This is why we're going to thoroughly cover the subject of sex trafficking, hoping you will join us on Saturday in fighting this horrible, horrible crime. We must do more than just talk. Women have a tendency to discuss subjects like sex, sex trafficking, rape as if it happens to someone else. The subject is unpleasant, so many women choose to ignore it. This is a mistake. Women exercise the same behavior when it comes to rape. We do not want to discuss the subject. We do not want to prepare for the event. How can you protect your child if you refuse to talk to them about rape? You must find courage somewhere and be a responsible parent and discuss the unpleasant things in life. These discussions with your children can help them protect themselves. You would be telling them to look for bad people. The more you talk about rape, the better your daughter will be prepared to deal with the rapist. There are characteristics of the rapist, just like there are characteristics of a pimp. Why should you go to church begging God to help you when a pimp turns your daughter into a prostitute, when all you had to do was talk to your daughter over and over and over again about how men use women to make money off their bodies? It is foolish to think it will not happen to you. Start shaping your child's mind now instead of waiting until she is in a caustic relationship that might cost her her life to start talking to her. Stop having children if you're not willing to fight for them. Fighting for your child means educating yourself on how to train your children and how to talk to them. There is lots of information and books that can help you. And there are also lots of organizations with information. All you have to do is reach out. Stop walking around with your head in the sand, pretending all is well when the ground is crumbling under your feet. Granted, no one is perfect, but when it comes to your children, you must fight for them before someone takes their body and minds. Sex traffickers are banking on our ignorance and lack of activity. Again, I say, no one is perfect, but when it comes to your children, you must fight for them before someone else takes their body and mind. Some sex traffickers are banking on our ignorance and lack of activity. There is something else women love to do, and that is to blame the victim. He asked for it. She asked for it. Look at the dress she was wearing. In other words, the woman was raped because the man cannot be expected to have self-control when a woman dresses sexy. Men are so overcome with the thought of sex that they have to rape someone. This is a sign of self-hatred and jealousy in women. You are not dead, so stop acting like it. There are hundreds of mothers suffering in this country, not knowing where their child is or where their child has been taken and what is being done to her. A 19-year-old college student is missing from Pennsylvania. 5 girls went missing from D.C. area within 1 week. The list goes on. This pattern has to stop. We can't leave it for someone else to do. We must become involved. Later in the month, shall speak about particulars regarding kidnapped victims. This is our first broadcast, so I thought I would make an introduction. We at Women of Courage will spend quite a bit of time discussing events and issues affecting women and children. These topics are very important because they will be a matter of life and death. We are taking a stance against violence against women and children. The women in this country must begin to take an active role in stopping the violence. Stopping the violence is everyone's fight. We need to stop thinking violence happens elsewhere. It is not going to happen to me or anyone in my family. That is just not true. If you do not want to find yourself trying to cope with a violent moment in your future, you need to join us now in stopping the violence. There are hundreds of things you can do. All you have to do is take the time. The alarm is gone off. Altering the nation, it's time to act. We must do something. We have more than 64,000 black women missing in this country, and the number is growing. So if you do not want to be a victim of violence or have someone in your family become a victim of violence, you need to join us now. Our sole purpose is to get women working together to solve the problem of sexual assault of children in the home, sex trafficking of children and young women, sexual assault, and the kidnapping of women during social functions. In order to solve any problem, we need a clear and concise information, thus our radio show. We're going to discuss the subjects of rape, sexual violence, domestic violence, being abducted, selecting victims, how to build your child's self-esteem, grooming, and much more. The subjects we will be covering this month is sex trafficking. We are going to take several different approaches to this problem in hopes that you will join Women of Courage in stamping this practice out. This practice involves not only women but children. This practice is one of the world's fastest growing industries, especially in the United States. Sex trafficking is a form of slavery and it is a crime. It's much easier for a pimp to traffic to sell a girl over and over again than it is to go out and sell drugs. Ripping a woman or a child from their environment, brainwashing and making them fear for their lives is one of the most important keys to holding slaves. In many cases, the victims are not only threatened with murder, but the pimp or trafficker also threatens to harm their families and the ones they love the most. This is one of the reasons why victims choose not to escape and to obey everything the abductor needs. Now, what is the motive for the sex traffickers? Money and control. When a pimp or trafficker approaches a female, there are some things that take place during what they call the game. The selection process is underway. The predator is making contact with the victim at the mall, at school, the playground, parties, the park, and especially the internet. This is why you have to continuously talk to girls. Once a connection is made and a friendship develops, the courtship process goes into full mode. The pimp the trafficker becomes his loving boyfriend, buying gifts, listening to their problems, being the rock that the victim can lean on. The trust builds rather quickly during this phase. Again, this is why you have to talk to girls, especially about the dangers of the internet. After a bond is built, the isolation begins. The pimp will require the child to move into his stable. She becomes part of the family, and the other girls in the stable are referred to as folks. In many cases, a pimp or a trafficker will want the victim to call him daddy. The victim is told she has to help pay for the home, to help be a provider. And if she loves their daddy, They will do anything, including taking jobs and servicing men. Remember the women in the Manson family who killed Sharon Tate? They spent the rest of their young lives in prison. Remember, it is easy to build strong minds than to repair broken people. Contrary to popular belief, the pimp does not offer protection, and they are glamorized. This glamorization is far from reality as to how pimps actually behave. The money the victims make, they do not keep, it's given to the trafficker. A person trapped in the sex trade has to meet a quota every night before she can come home. The money is then turned over to the pimp. The victim in many cases is branded with a tattoo. This shows the girl is owned by someone. If there was not a demand for men who pay for sex, there would not be a supply. We need to begin in schools and educate young men and women on the dangers of pornography, how victims are lured, and what this industry is all about. We may start to make a dent in the world of domestic violence and sex trafficking. This is where Women of Courage comes in. We're asking women to become involved. We need women to commit to combating human trafficking and modern day slavery and to strengthen the anti trafficking movement. If you are a victim or you know someone who may be a victim of a pimp in a controlled environment, please call 888 3737 888 to speak to someone that can help you. The hotline is confidential. It is on 24 hours a day and it is free. Human trafficking, as defined by the United Nations, is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or the receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force, coercion for the purpose of exploitation. An estimated 24.9 million people are trapped in some form of modern day slavery, most often exploited for labor or for sex. I am going to pause for a second to take a short break while you listen to information regarding willpower and encouragement. It is all a matter of learning new behaviors. And please remember, it is easier to build strong minds than to repair injured people. What I said is a modification of a quote by Frederick Douglass.
We live in a society that has created an impression that a woman is limited in what she can do. The society lets you see yourself as a weaker human who should not aspire to greater things. Most of us grew up with that mentality and thus turned out to be unambitious. Good news is there are lots of women out there just like you who have turned their lives around dramatically. There's one underlying factor common to all these women: courage. They were courageous in the face of societal intimidation. They were courageous enough to move against societal norms that were unacceptable to them. They were courageous when it mattered most, thus writing their names in the sands of time. Reading the series Women of Courage is a good place to learn about the significant role courage plays in achieving great things in life.
Modern history is written on the back of women who chose not to conform. Our history books are littered with examples of powerful women like Rosa Parks, Malala Yousafzai, and the Triangle Shirtwaist factory workers. But for every tale of a woman's success and perseverance, there is a harrowing backstory of tribulation and strife. Things are better now, we say. It's not like it used to be. But turn on the news. Turn on the news in your own city. Turn on the international news. Women are suffering from the restrictive society in Saudi Arabia to your own neighborhood. It's better, but ask yourself, is it good enough? Women of Courage tells a tale of women, from the harrowing story of early women to their victorious perseverance. It tells tales that have not been told enough. Examples of how women have the strength to put their foot down and map their own future. Read their stories and become better equipped to write your own story by changing your behavior and becoming a woman of courage.
This right here, this is the moment right before the day starts when you get to look in the mirror and tell yourself who you are. Now, you've been through some dark days. I believe that. But all that pain and struggle, that made the person you're looking at now. So when you walk out of these doors today, I need you to believe in yourself. I need you to believe you are the strongest person walking this planet. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know the grind it took for you to be here. So when you leave here today, I need you to show them.
Twice a month on Saturday, I meet with my listeners for a discussion about issues affecting women. Join us. For dates, times, and directions, you can reach us at murderedvoices@gmail.com. Stop thinking there's nothing you can do to change the world. Your life is important. For more information on our books or subjects discussed, email us at murderedvoices@gmail.com. We live in a society that has created an impression that a woman is limited in what she can do. The society lets you see yourself as a weaker human who should not aspire to greater things. Most of us grew up with that mentality and thus turned out to be unambitious. Good news is there are a lot of women out there, just like you, who have turned their lives around dramatically. Women like Mother Teresa, Lucy Burns, and Rosa Parks. There's one underlying factor common to all these women: courage. They were courageous in the face of societal intimidation. They were courageous enough to move against societal norms that were unacceptable to them. They were courageous when it mattered, most thus writing their standards in the sands of time. Purchase the Women of Courage series today at http://touchedbythelight.us or mail a check to P.O. Box 7267, Ann Arbor, Michigan 48107.
During our Friday broadcast, I'm going to select a word for discussion. Words that describe human relationships. One of the words I want to discuss today is the word avoidance. The word avoidance is a noun, defined as an action of emptying, vacating, or clearing away, an act or practice of avoiding or withdrawing from something. One definition of the word avoiding is eluding or preventing a person who runs away from an object or a situation. You dodge the situation, you circumvent the situation. Yet avoidance is not always healthy. An example of avoidance is when you stay away from the loudmouth person at work or the busybody at church who is always finding fault with other people. These people are agitators. These people are distasteful to you, so you do your best to stay clear of them. Fear is oftentimes behind the behavior of avoidance. One fears they cannot deal with the busybody at work or church. You don't feel strong enough to cope with these people, so they run free, spreading their hate and discontent, causing pain to others. Most women deal with avoidance through submarine activity. We go looking for someone to help us in a clandestine way. We do not feel confident to deal with these bad people by ourselves. Did you know that gossiping is a clandestine activity and it too is a form of fear and avoidance? One of the problems with avoiding people and situations is, that avoidance is not always happy and it's not always healthy. The reason for this is that you teach this behavior to your children. On some occasions, avoidance can lead us into real danger. You avoid the loudmouth at work and you lose an opportunity for a raise. You avoid the busybody at church and then she starts a rumor about your daughter. Your daughter is gaining weight, so she must be pregnant. Or your daughter has lost weight, so she must have had an abortion. See, loudmouth people and busybody people are dangerous, and the only way to deal with them is to stop them permanently. This means exposing their behavior, bringing their behavior out into the sunlight. We have hundreds of monsters living around us, entering our lives as truck drivers, delivery men, cable installers, and insurance agents. Some of the worst monsters in the world we will find are ordinary men. Some of these men are disguised as police officers or firemen. One of the most virulent rapists in Ohio was a fireman. He entered a woman's house under a pretext and spent hours and hours raping and torturing her. These men do their best to find out everything they can about us so they can learn our weaknesses to exploit us. The best way to face a monster is not to avoid him, but to engage him. The best way to fight a human monster is to raise strong children, especially men. The best way to raise a strong man is to teach him to read. Become involved with our Saturday meetings to help build a strong community. A strong community is not a community of wealth. A strong community is a community of knowledge. We must give knowledge to the young. A monster that was exposed through an act of courage was in Savoy, Illinois in 2017. It involved the fireman Captain David Dunn. Captain Dunn was sentenced to 36 years for drugging and raping a young fireman in his home. Drug was convicted May 2018 of aggravated criminal sexual assault and aggravated criminal sexual abuse. He drugged the young fireman. I want you to read the two articles describing this case. The articles are on the internet. You can read them during your lunch hour. The name of the articles are Former Fire Captain Gets Prison for Drugging and Raping Probationary Fireman, July 4th, 2018. The second article is Fireman's Alleged Rape Victim Testifies. I couldn't move. I couldn't fight back. This is May 16th, 2018. If the male victim had not been strong enough to come forward, Captain Dunn would have raped again and again. Another monster living among us is Helmuth Cope. Mr. Cope is an 81-year-old man living in Florida. He offered a mother $200,000 if she would sell her 8-year-old daughter to him. He was arrested and charged with simple battery and false imprisonment. We have monsters living all around us, so we need to prepare ourselves to fight them. These monsters kill us, rape us, and commit all types of heinous crimes. making our lives miserable. So instead of huddling in fear, we need to stand up and do something. The best way to stand up is to band together. Come out on Saturday and help us fight these monsters together. You can run and hide, but it's not going to make these monsters go away. The only way to solve the problem is to confront them head on. Winston Churchill would not have been voted into office as Prime Minister if it were not for the cowardice of Neville Chamberlain. Chamberlain decided that Hitler was too big to fight, so he capitulated and wanted Britain to lay down at the feet of Hitler. On the other hand, Winston Churchill told Hitler to go to hell and prepare for war. Winston Churchill's belief was, you can't do any more to me than I can do to you. So who do you want to be? Winston Churchill, a man who is not afraid to go into battle? Or Neville Chamberlain, quaking in his boots, groveling at the feet of a bully like Hitler? Neville Chamberlain's policy was a policy of appeasement. Let us just go try to get along with Hitler. If we're nice to Hitler, maybe Hitler will leave us alone. Maybe if we're quiet, bad things will go away. Sounds familiar? Well, Neville Chamberlain did the same thing as the men sent in to scout the land that came back with the report of the giants. Remember the 12 spies in the book of Numbers, chapter 13, verses 1 through 33? God had promised the Hebrews land for future generations. Moses sent these 12 men to scout the land of Canaan. When the men returned, they were full of fear. 10 of these men, like Neville Chamberlain, had no faith or belief. They said the Hebrews would not be able to inherit the land. Only 2 men had faith that they could conquer and inhabit the land of Canaan. The promised land was a promise made by God to Abraham. God told Abraham that his seed, his son, would inherit a promised land. Well, the 10 men who came back out of Canaan persuaded the entire people of Israel that they could not take the land, causing the people of Israel to wander for 40 years. Only 2 men believed. Those men was Joshua and Caleb. We will come back to the word avoidance in the future. We will also discuss problems we have at work during our Saturday meetings. One of the worst things you can do for yourself is to live an entire life in fear. Neville Chamberlain was a coward and lacked foresight and vision. He had no imagination. He was a meat and potato man, whereas Churchill slept in the nude and drank whiskey for breakfast. Take a read of Neville Chamberlain and Winston Churchill. Neville Chamberlain believed in diplomacy. Winston Churchill was a problem solver. He was the one who established the Foreign Service and clandestine units that helped win the war. They used subterfuge and outright lies to win the war. His leadership led to the establishment of the commando units. You do not have to live a life like Neville Chamberlain. You can live boldly. Come out and join us on Saturday and listen to how other women have overcome obstacles. Also, in my effort to empower women who are entrepreneurs, I ask you to email me information about your new business ventures. I will announce it on the air on Friday. You can email Women of Courage at murderedvoices@gmail.com. Also, did you know that the women in New Zealand are celebrating the 125th anniversary of women's suffrage? They were among the first women given the right to vote. Here are 3 quotations regarding fear that will help you with the behavior of avoidance. The first quote is from Patrick Rothfuss, taken from The Wise Man's Fear. It's the questions we cannot answer that teach us the most. They teach us how to think. If you give a man an answer, all he gains is a little fact. But give him a question, and he'll look for his own answer. Here's a quote from Marie Curie. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. Here's a quotation from an unknown author. To me, it's the most important quote. Fear is a habit. So is self-pity, defeat, anxiety, despair, hopelessness, and resignation. You can eliminate all of these negative habits with two simple resolves. I can and I will. I'm going to pause for a second to take a short break so you can listen to some videos on encouragement.
We live in a society that has created an impression that a woman is limited in what she can do. The society lets you see yourself as a weaker human who should not aspire to greater things. Most of us grew up with that mentality and thus turned out to be unambitious. Good news is there are lots of women out there just like you who have turned their lives around dramatically. There's one underlying factor common to all these women: courage. They were courageous in the face of societal intimidation. They were courageous enough to move against societal norms that were unacceptable to them. They were courageous when it mattered most, thus writing their names in the sands of time. Reading the series Women of Courage is a good place to learn about the significant role courage plays in achieving great things in life.
Modern history is written on the back of women who chose not to conform. Our history books are littered with examples of powerful women like Rosa Parks, Malala Yousafzai, and the Triangle Shirtwaist factory workers. But for every tale of a woman's success and perseverance, there is a harrowing backstory of tribulation and strife. Things are better now, we say. It's not like it used to be. But turn on the news. Turn on the news in your own city. Turn on the international news. Women are suffering from the restrictive society in Saudi Arabia to your own neighborhood. It's better, but ask yourself, is it good enough? Women of Courage tells a tale of women, from the harrowing story of early women to their victorious perseverance. It tells tales that have not been told enough, examples of how women have the strength to put their foot down and map their own future. Read their stories and become better equipped to write your own story by changing your behavior and becoming a woman of courage.
We live in a society that has created an impression that a woman is limited in what she can do. The society lets you see yourself as a weaker human who should not aspire to greater things. Most of us grew up with that mentality and thus turned out to be unambitious. Good news is there are a lot of women out there, just like you, who have turned their lives around dramatically. Women like Mother Teresa, Lucy Burns, and Rosa Parks. There's one underlying factor common to all these women: courage. They were courageous in the face of societal intimidation. They were courageous enough to move against societal norms that were unacceptable to them. They were courageous when it mattered most, thus writing their standards in the sands of time. Purchase the Women of Courage series today at http://touchedbythelight.us or mail a check to P.O. Box 7267, Ann Arbor, Michigan 48107.
Now we will discuss who are the targets of human traffickers. Anyone can fall victim to human trafficking. However, vulnerable populations who have little social and legal protection are the most at risk. The majority of victims are women, about 70%. Other factors are poverty, residing in a place of political instability, systematic racism, mental illness, or being involved in gangs. Now, where does the human trafficking occur? It can occur anywhere in the world, including the United States. We don't notice trafficking in our own backyard because it is often physically masked. For instance, men who are trafficked in construction industry are often kept in dormitories away from the work site. Russia, China, and the Sudan are always listed among the countries with the highest human trafficking. According to the United States Department, countries with unstable governments exhibit higher risk for human trafficking. We have been led to believe that sex trafficking is rampant in Southeast Asia, especially in the Philippines, Thailand, and Cambodia. But we fail to realize sex trafficking is rampant in the United States. While child trafficking occurs more frequently in India and Pakistan than labor trafficking, which is higher in the Middle East and South America. Now, how are victims lured? Traffickers lure victims in a variety of ways: kidnapping, coercion, but victimization can also occur by means of fraud, such as the case in which a person believes that they're entering into a employment contract, but instead they have their documentation confiscated and they become enslaved. This occurs with a lot of mail order brides, women who believe they are going to marry a foreigner and end up being sold in a trafficking ring. A term referred to as Romeo pimping may be used to traffic women and children for sexual exploitation. Romeo pimping is a situation in which a man tricks a victim into believing they are in a relationship or in love only to enslave them. Now, how can human trafficking be identified? Unfortunately, this is a loaded question because there are so many ways and signs that may indicate that a person is being trafficked. According again to the United States State Department, anyone can be a victim, and there are no warning signs, but some common indicators or red flags may include living with an employer, living in a cramped space with multiple people, being unable to speak to another person privately, displaying signs of physical abuse, behaving submissively, fearful, receiving extremely low or no pay for work, speaking in a manner that appears scripted and rehearsed, and prostituting while underage. Now, what are the effects of human trafficking on victims? These people tend to be physically exploited, oftentimes without access to proper food, hygiene, health care, and may be frequently subject to violence at the hands of their traffickers, leaving them to suffer a number of health complications. These issues may be compounded if the victim is trafficked for sex, as he or she becomes vulnerable to life threatening illnesses, such as STDs and AIDS. However, the physical consequences are not the only effects of human trafficking on victims. Trafficked persons also suffer negative psychological and social effects, such as trauma, anxiety, PSTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, shame, and depression are common results of trafficking. Depression is exceedingly common in individuals who are trafficked. Children are especially at risk for psychological and emotional development. A survey conducted by JAMA, the Pediatric Journal of Adolescents between the ages of 10 2017 who are trafficked in the Southeast found that 12% of the children had attempted to harm themselves in previous months alone. 56% suffered from depression. Victims of human trafficking also commonly experience social rejection and ostracism. These individuals are often isolated from their social circles, unable to engage socially or reach out for help. International victims may be especially unable to ask for help due to the lack of native fluency or restricted geographic and cultural knowledge. Sex traffic victims may face additional stigma and negative responses from friends and family, posing a further threat to their emotional and psychological development. I am going to pause for a second.
Modern history is written on the back of women who chose not to conform. Our history books are littered with examples of powerful women like Rosa Parks, Malala Yousafzai, and the Triangle Shirtwaist factory workers. But for every tale of a woman's success and perseverance, there is a harrowing backstory of tribulation and strife. Things are better now, we say. It's not like it used to be. But turn on the news. Turn on the news in your own city. Turn on the international news. Women are suffering from the restrictive society in Saudi Arabia to your own neighborhood. It's better, but ask yourself, is it good enough? Women of Courage tells a tale of women, from the harrowing story of early women to their victorious perseverance. It tells tales that have not been told enough, examples of how women have the strength to put their foot down and map their own future. Read their stories and become better equipped to write your own story by changing your behavior and becoming a woman of courage.
This right here, this is the moment right before the day starts when you get to look in the mirror and tell yourself who you are. Now, you've been through some dark days. I believe that. But all that pain and struggle, that made the person you're looking at now. So when you walk out of these doors today, I need you to believe in yourself. I need you to believe you are the strongest person walking this planet. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know the grind it took for you to be here. So when you leave here today, I need you to show them.
Twice a month on Saturday, I meet with my listeners for a discussion about issues affecting women. Join us. For dates, times, and directions, you can reach us at murderedvoices@gmail.com. Stop thinking there's nothing you can do to change the world. Your life is important. For more information on our books or subjects discussed, email us at murderedvoices@gmail.com.
To supplement what you are learning today, I suggest you read the book A Christian is Never Desperate The information you read will help you lay a foundation for dealing with negative people, fear, and avoidance. This book is especially good for the woman or man who is just divorced, or the man who lost his girlfriend, or the woman who has lost her boyfriend, or the man or woman who is starting a new business. In other words, if you are full of fear, you can learn to stand up. It is just a matter of developing good behavior and trying over and over again, learning from your mistakes. If you email us at murderedvoices@gmail.com, we can tell you how to obtain the book, The Christian is Never Desperate. It sells for $9.95. Believe me, you will enjoy reading the book over and over again, and there is much to learn. A Christian is Never Desperate is not available in bookstores. You can only obtain the book through the Women and Children Restoration Ministry out of Ann Arbor. Unlike bookstores, the proceeds realized from the sale of the book go to programs that help women and children in stress. The book tells you that you can be victorious over adversity. A Christian acts and lives by faith. God always has a miracle for you. He gives you the facts you need to make important decisions, to be successful, and to overcome mediocrity. A Christian is Never Desperate is another one of our pocket-sized devotionals that you can keep in your car, in your purse, or at work whenever you need to reach for something that will strengthen you to fight the day. When a problem strikes, when the horizon looks gloomy and gray, it is not time for despair. It is not time to act as if there is no hope. It is time to tell the storm that God is with you and there is nothing to fear. You can read the book at touchedbythelight.us. You can read the first chapter of the book and watch a video. This book was not written to indoctrinate you into the cult of being a Christian. We do not ask you to follow God blindly. The book was written to help you stand against soothsayers who do not want you to prosper. A Christian is Never Desperate discusses the trinity of trouble, which is worry, doubt, and fear. Are you the person like the Jews in the desert who murmured and doubted and argued with Moses and Aaron concerning their faith when they encountered the trinity of trouble, worry, doubt, and fear? The book A Christian is Never Desperate is for people who have encountered the trinity of trouble. Worry, doubt, and fear will put you in the grave if you let it. Men carried around demons for years, long times until the demons start to take over. Worry is the repetition of one or several thoughts of doom. Doubt is the everlasting question, is something right or wrong? Fear is always being afraid. Worry, doubt, and fear can destroy your continence. These emotions can land you in the hospital or on the psychiatric couch. Drugs and alcohol are only temporary fixes to making you feel good. The book Christian is Never Desperate tells you that you do not have to succumb to these emotions. You do not have to drug yourself with pills and alcohol. A Christian is Never Desperate tells you it is time to change the way you live. Today can be a major turning point in your life. When you want something that you have never had, you must do something that you have never done. So if you want to change your life forever, you must change your behavior today. If you are struggling to control your life, here's an opportunity for you to change. Pick up a book and read it. We are just as responsible for the things we do as we are responsible for the things we do not do. This is the day you can change. Make your life exciting again. Get out of the rut. You can change your world one step at a time. There is no reason why you cannot reach for your dream. Remember, if you are feeling lost, come join us on Saturday and see what you can do when you work with like-minded women. Here are some questions for you. What is desperation? What causes desperation? What leads to desperation? Why can't desperation be managed? The dictionary defines the word desperation as a noun, as lost hope and surrender to despair, a state of hopelessness leading to rashness. The synonyms for despair are despondence, forlornness, and hopelessness. The dictionary goes on to provide a sentence for the meaning of despair. She felt overcome by desperation, the desperation of severe poverty. They hired me out of desperation because they couldn't find anyone else. As you read the definition of the word desperation, one becomes surrounded by gloom. This is a dark word, a word no one wants to use very often. One would say your life sucks if you are desperate. Desperation is not a happy occasion. Desperation is an emotion that can lead you to kill someone, to commit adultery, to cheat at work, or to commit a foolish act. A desperate person feels there is no way out. They are boxed into one behavior. Thoughts run through their mind: I have to do this or else. I have to try this even though I don't think it will work. Maybe I can win. These are the questions and situations we explore in A Christian is Never Desperate. The supposition is if you believe in God, that God should appear in your life causing you not to commit a desperate act. There should be enough information in God's Word to cause a man or a woman to reconsider acting desperately. Below are four headlines discussing the crimes four grandmothers are accused of committing. What does these women, what caused or what drove these women to break the law? Why did these women think they had to sell drugs or have their husband killed for money? Look at the headlines. Friday, February the 17th, 2012, the News 8 broadcast reported grandmother arrested in drug bust in Ansonia, Connecticut. Friday, April 5th, 2012. The following article, American grandmother jailed on drug charges, was published in the Jamaica Observer. Either the television or someone made Jane Carmichael, age 52, believe drug smuggling was easy. This assumption will now cost her 12 years of her life. April 13, 2012. The following article, Marijuana Grandma Arrested, was reported in the news broadcast in Florida. April 10, 2013. The following article, Grandmother arrested with grandson in murder plot, was reported. Thursday, January the 2nd, 2014. The following article said, Grandmother arrested for calling 911 to report a beer emergency. This was reported by Fox 8 at GHPB. All of these articles reported elderly women acting badly. The news is shocking. You can't help but ask yourself, what happened to these women? How can a grandmother sell drugs or ask her grandson to commit murder? Grandmothers do not sell drugs or have their grandsons kill their husbands for money. Something is seriously wrong. What made these women act the way they did? What caused elderly women to act out of character and break the law? Selling drugs is not a traffic ticket. Selling drugs is a felony, a crime that causes years in prison. We believe these women were desperate. We think they failed at life and wanted money in their old age, and they were willing to take a chance to get the money. What made these women act desperate? We explore desperation in the book A Christian is Never Desperate. These women had a problem, and they decided to use a bad method to solve that problem. One facet of problem solving that can lead to a better solution is changing the way one thinks. Most people persist in doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, when actually what the person needs to do to solve many of their problems is to change the way they think and to change the associates they live around and to begin acquiring information that from a different source. People need a stratified information source, not a localized information source. That means the same old friends. What leads to desperation is when a person's thinking something is imminent, is going to happen, and there's no way out except to commit a desperate act, like stealing or lying. Read and study the book A Christian is Never Desperate. See if you can find information that will help you avoid being desperate. The choices we make change who we become, causing us to say, who would I be now if only I had done such and such a thing? Where would I be if I had married Bob instead of Charlie? Think about it. Who would I be now if I had just changed?
Twice a month on Saturday, I meet with my listeners for a discussion about issues affecting women. Join us. For dates, times, and directions, you can reach us at murderedvoices@gmail.com. Stop thinking there's nothing you can do to change the world. Your life is important. For more information on our books or subjects discussed, email us at murderedvoices@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening to Women of Courage and have a great day.